Well, I'm certainly happy to speak this afternoon about the history of the Stroud Mansion and the history of the organization and steps that we're going to be taking as we look to the future. And the title of this talk is called Promoting the Past, Engaging the Future. Let's start off with the beautiful Stroud Mansion. Built in 1795 by Colonel Jacob Stroud. Jacob built this house for his eldest son, John. And John lived here for about 4 or 5 years and decided that downtown Stroudsburg back in 1795 was a little bit too busy and hectic for him. There were 5 houses on Main Street, and poor old John could not handle the traffic, the noise, or the busybodies. So his father built him another house on the outskirts of town, the Glenbrook Country Club down on Dreyer Avenue, where John could be a farmer. So, with the house being vacant, Jacob Stroud invited his next eldest son, Daniel, to move into the house. And that's what Daniel did. Daniel and his wife, Elizabeth, moved into the house. They had 10 children together. So there were lots of little Strouds running around the property. Daniel was raised a Presbyterian, but when he moved into the Stroud Mansion with his wife, he became a Quaker. Elizabeth had been a Quaker as well, so he converted to that religion. And Daniel, he really embraced that religion. He got rid of all the alcohol in the house because he didn't believe in drinking, and also put on a big show out on the front steps where he broke his fiddle because he didn't believe in listening to music anymore either. He also burned all of his books, except for one. That's right, the Bible. So Daniel was a very, very interesting guy, but he was the one that really helped develop Stroudsburg, helped his father sell lots and lay out the streets to develop the town of Stroud. Now, the Stroud family lived in the house till about 1836 when no one in the house wanted it anymore, which is kind of hard to imagine that this beautiful building that nobody wanted to live there. So the Strouds moved out and Daniel Stroud decided to rent the property. He rented it to Joseph Snyder, who operated a tavern called the Mansion House Tavern. Here is an advertisement announcing the newest establishment in Stroudsburg. This is from 1837. And you can see about a third of the way down, it says that they will be serving choice liquors. Daniel was not too happy about this, being that he did not believe in drinking at all. But they had a 3-year lease and there was not much he could do. But as soon as that 3-year lease was over, well, Daniel Stroud did end it. And in 1840, he welcomed the Malvin brothers into the Stroud Mansion, who operated the Temperance House, where, quote, bucketfuls of lemonade were provided, something much more appropriate, well, according to Daniel, in his mind, that the house could be used for. By 1847, Mrs. Margaret Eagles, a widow, opened up a hotel named the Mansion House Inn. And here we have a newspaper advertisement from 1847. I'm just going to read a section of it. I just love the way that they wrote back then. Persons visiting on business or pleasure excursions will find a comfortable, convenient, and quiet home. Jurors and others attending court are invited to call and satisfy themselves. Strangers from the city or elsewhere who contemplate spending some time in the beautiful and retired village of Stroudsburg will do well by making the above house their home during their stay here. In short, all are invited to call. And here's a picture, a copy of a map from 1858 showing downtown Stroudsburg. And as you can see, by 1858, it certainly was a bustling little community. So bustling, in fact, that the Strouds decided that maybe they actually wanted to come back to the Stroud Mansion. So we had James and George brothers move back in with their half-sister, Martha Stroud Shotwell. Interestingly, we're not really sure if the 3 of them just loved their privacy or maybe they didn't really like each other too much. But when they moved into the house, a line was drawn through the front door of the house to separate it. And you can see here we have a copy of a map this is from 1875. And there's the Stroud house, and right down the middle is that line. You can also see the property owners. It says Stroud and Shotwell. And this is the earliest photograph we have of the Stroud Mansion. This was taken in the 1860s, so certainly when the Stroud family had moved back into the property. The mansion was then rented by Reverend Heilig and his family from 1880 to 1889. Now, he was a Lutheran minister in Middle Smithfield Township, and he cared for the house immensely. He actually installed the gas lighting and draped the home in black following President Garfield's assassination in 1881. The house was vacant for the next 3 years until Timothy and Josephine Everett purchased the house in 1892. The cost, $8,500. They lived in a portion of it and rented out all of the other rooms. So in 1819, the Stroud Mansion went on the market. It was in pretty rough shape. The asking price was $15,000. Now, Mary Erdman, this is a photograph we have of her. She is the one that is seated to the left. This is when she was becoming a doctor, one of the first female doctors. She and Mr. Gilbert decided that they needed to save this building, that the Stroud Mansion was important enough. This represents our heritage, and we cannot let it just be destroyed by the wrecking ball. So they formed the Stroudsburg Civic Club a year later and raised over $20,000 to save the Stroud Mansion. This is a plaque that we have hanging in the front hallway at the Stroud Mansion, and you can see all of the names of people who contributed money to that $20,000 to help save the building and turn it into the Stroud Community House. So the Historical Association was formed on April 8th, 1921, when a group of 40 deeply interested and enthusiastic citizens met at the Monroe County Courthouse. The meeting was presided over by Robert Keller, who offered an inspiring address to the citizens. In addition to Mr. Keller, 3 individuals were also invited to speak, including Clint Eilenberger, who was treasurer of the Stroudsburg Bank Company, and also certainly a name that folks here would recognize, excuse me. And one of his quotes that they put in the newspaper, something that really just speaks to me. We are the heirs of the ages, and we can't do anything better than to teach our people what our men and women have done before us. I just love that quote. Our first president, William A. Gilbert, and the first vice president, Mary Erdman. That's the photo that we saw earlier. I should say Dr. Mary Erdman. Okay, so in January 1920, the Stroudsburg Civic Club purchased the Mansion House. By 1921, the Historical Association was founded. And on January 22nd, 1922, the Stroudsburg Civic Club formally incorporated the structure as the Stroud Community House. And it was their intention to host all sorts of organizations in this building, and host organizations they did. The public library was here. I'm sure some of our viewers will remember when the public library was in the Stroud Mansion before they moved across the street. The Civic Club, of course, had a room here. The Women's Club occupied rooms, the Junior Women's Club. The Red Cross was originally stationed here in the Stroud Mansion. The Girl Scouts had a room. The Daughters of the American Revolution met here. Of course, the Historical Society, and they still found a place to rent out 3 apartments at that time in 1920. This is what the Stroud Mansion looked like in 1920 when they saved the building. I think this is probably one of my most favorite photographs. I just love the brick-lined streets, and that telephone pole is very, very eye-catching. This is how the Stroud Mansion looked in the 1960s. So on March 8th, 1990, the Monroe County Historical Society merged with the Monroe County Museum Association to form the present-day Monroe County Historical Association. Both organizations pretty much had a very similar mission, so it made sense for the two to join. And it wasn't until 1994 that the Women's Club of the Stroudsburgs transferred total ownership of the Stroud Mansion over to the Monroe County Historical Association. And this is another plaque that we have here at the in the front hallway at the Mansion House. When they turned over the ownership of the building to the Historical Association, this is what it looked like. This is the Stroud Mansion in the 1990s. You can see it needs a little bit of attention. A little bit of the paint is coming off of the exterior. This is just another angle of the Stroud Mansion. When the Historical Association obtained full ownership of the property, they really had a lot of work that they had to do. You can see here from these photos that there were holes in the ceiling. The front door looked pretty shabby, and the front staircase had been modified. This is not how it was in the Stroud's time. From what I understand, underneath the stairwell was a small restroom. The restroom was so small that it couldn't actually fit the sink. And if you look at the bottom photograph with the stairs, you can see that the bathroom sink is actually on the outside of the bathroom and located in the front entranceway of the Stroud Mansion. So it certainly served a purpose, but it's a little strange to have a sink right in the front hallway of a building. The Historical Association in 1994 received a grant to fix the building and make all of the necessary repairs. And this is how it looked in the 2000s. And of course, this is how our building looks today, with that beautiful slate roof. It's very, very striking, that's for sure. So our challenges. The Monroe County Historical Association is an organization that is housed in a building built in 1795. And we operate the museum and library under the restrictions of a 226-year-old structure. We have very, very limited space for educational programming, workshops, and events. For those of you that have certainly been here, you've seen our second floor meeting room, and it does get pretty cozy. We can fit about 35 people, and that's it. So we don't have a lot of room to offer programming. The high-use areas, such as the library, the meeting room, and the offices, are beginning to damage the 1795 structure. Flooring is definitely starting to give way. Our building is not handicapped accessible at all. We have no HVAC, which means we have no climate control, which is certainly something that is problematic for our artifacts and archives, and also for the comfort level of our guests. And something else that I didn't necessarily think of until this past year is because we have no HVAC, we have no air exchange. The Stroud Mansion windows do not open, so we really cannot circulate air safely. I've never lived through a pandemic, and certainly this is something that now is on everybody's mind, and something that definitely needs to happen. We also are out of storage for our museum artifacts and library archives. So during the 1994 and 1995 renovations, the board recognized these challenges, but they had a lot on their plate. They had to really get the building up and running, and they didn't know the best way to remedy any of these issues. So over the years, ideas have ranged from actually moving from the Stroud Mansion, leaving the site, to purchasing the next door neighbor's house as an expansion. In 2016, the board of directors really took a hard look at our facility and began to explore building an addition to the rear of the Stroud Mansion. They invited 4 architects to meet, draw plans, and identify ways to address all of these issues that are facing the Historical Association. The board decided to choose MKSD. They are an architect firm out of the Lehigh Valley, and John Young is the project architect. Some of you may recognize John. He is a local guy. He graduated from Stroudsburg High School, and he has said to me on more than one occasion, this project's very personal to him, that this is his hometown history. And this is the drawing, the rendering that MKSD has come up with. You can see the Stroud Mansion attached with that hyphen, and then the Heritage Center. This is the look of it. And Bill, Leonard, and Ken Sandri will talk a little bit more about this design process following my presentation. This is how it will look from the front. You can see that there is a courtyard. And we do have some interior designs as well. This would be the community space. Remember I said we could fit about 35 people? Well, this is projected to seat 100 people. This is very, very exciting for me. I'm just so pleased to be able to really expand our programming and our workshops. When we have school groups here, we usually have to divide the classes up. It would just be amazing to have all of the classes in one space at the same time, equally learning. But it really is not just our program. I envision art shows and music and concerts, all sorts of things. And we already have someone who volunteered to teach Tai Chi in this location. So there's lots of potential for the community to gather in this spot. So how did the board of directors and staff design the Heritage Center? Well, first, there was a community workshop at NCC Monroe campus. About 40 stakeholders gathered and really worked through the whole day of this workshop, discussing the Historical Association, what we can be to the community and how do we go about being there. We heard their suggestions and their feedback, and it was a very, very productive afternoon. The board of directors really kept this momentum going, and we decided, well, if this dream does become a reality and we can build this Heritage Center, maybe we should know what's actually in the ground. So we had an archaeological dig at the Stroud Mansion. That was wonderful. We had a great summer with these students. We were very lucky to receive a Keystone grant from the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, led by Jonathan Burns at Juniata College. He welcomed students, undergraduate and graduate students, here for 7 weeks to do a dig at the mansion. We loved coming in every day. We were as excited as they were when they found items, and they found a lot of items. Thousands and thousands and thousands of artifacts were taken from the backyard. And they are currently at Juniata being cataloged and cleaned and documented, and then they are all going to come back home here to the Stroud Mansion. So I mentioned that we were out of space before. This doesn't even include the thousands and thousands and thousands of artifacts that this archaeological dig will be providing to us, and we certainly would love to have on display. So our timeline, the board of directors knew that this process was going to take a lot of time, and they thoughtfully planned out a rough timeline to begin to prepare for the expansion. So we had the workshop at NCC Monroe campus in 2017 and 2018. 2018 and 2019, we used that feedback from the workshop to really strengthen our policies, coming up with a stronger bylaws, policy and personnel manual, and the strategic plan, guided again by that community workshop. And then, of course, we received the grant to do the archaeological dig, and that occurred in the summer of 2019. In November of 2019, the board of directors hired Marcy Schick of MMS Advancement to assist with the feasibility study for a capital campaign. She completed all of her interviews this past fall. Of course, it was all done virtually, and presented the document to the board of directors in December. A task force made out of the MCHA board of directors has been created, and they are currently reviewing the results to create an action plan. We have been very, very thankful. In December of 2019, MCHA received a lead pledge from ESSA Bank and Trust for $2 million. I think we all know how generous ESSA is in the community, and this lead gift just meant so much to our organization. The challenge grant does expire in 2023 to allow time for fundraising, and of course the construction as well too. Last month, we were beyond delighted to hear that MCHA was awarded a $1 million from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through the RACP grant. Now, this grant is to fund construction of regional economic, cultural, civic, recreational, or historical improvement projects, and we certainly fit that category. Dates and anniversaries are very significant to us. We are historians here. So in 1920, the community came together to save the Stroud Mansion from the wrecking ball. Last year marked the 100th anniversary of their efforts to convert the building into a community center. In 1921, the Historical Association was founded, and we, of course, are currently celebrating our 100th anniversary of the founding of the organization. We really want to expand on the efforts of our forefathers and mothers that they made to commit and making sure that the Stroud Mansion remains a community center for all of our citizens. Now, as the executive director, this project is professional for me, but it is also personal. I am so proud that Monroe County is my adopted home. My children's roots run very, very deep in this community. They're actually 9th generation Monroe County citizens. And I think of them and all of Monroe County's next generations. And I am reminded that we are working today to save their history. And I'd like to just leave you with this thought before I wrap up. What kind of ancestor will you be? It is my deepest hope that 100 years from now, in 2121, that the community looks back with appreciation on our decision today to build a heritage center, to expand the outreach and preserve Monroe County's history, just as I look back 100 years to 1920. And I am in awe that the citizens joined together to save the Stroud Mansion in the first place. Thank you again so very much. I'm now going to turn this over to Ken Sandri, who's going to talk a little bit about the Heritage Center and the reason for the design. Ken, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Amy just showed you the images of the proposed Heritage Center. Last year, the association received many compliments on it, but we also heard concerns or confusion about why we chose an addition to a historic building with a modern appearance. I'd like to talk about that for a few minutes. After MCHA acknowledged the enormous need for space, we considered options like buying the next nearby building and getting offsite storage, but it became very clear that an on-site expansion of the Shroud Mansion was the most efficient option. In August of 2016, MCHA decided to hold that design competition Amy spoke about. Four local architectural firms were invited to prepare and submit their visions of how this expansion might look based on our requirements. Two of the four you can see on your screen. The board of directors then voted on which of the four designs they felt best accommodated our vision and needs, and MKSD Architects of Allentown was selected. On the right is their initial design they proposed. You'll notice that it's different than the one that we have now. Historically, the Stroud Mansion was built in 1795, as you've heard. The three-story stone stuccoed structure followed the Georgian and federal architecture of the era. While today's historic preservation guidelines do not prohibit mimicking the architectural appearance of an earlier time period, doing so is certainly difficult, especially when building with today's proportions and materials, as well as abiding by the Universal Building Code requirements. These attempts can appear to be fake old, even to a casual observer. Contrary to the common belief, the National Historic Preservation Act in the United States, the standards from that act do not intend to stifle or diminish the introduction of modern architecture in historic districts. However, the guidance does seek an architectural balance between the new and the old. The MCHA objective was to avoid the fake old appearance, and we found agreement with MKSD's approach in not creating an old-looking addition built in the 2020s. MCHA needs a functional building, compatible with the mansion, but also distinct and true to its time. Compatibility is the key. The 1964 Venice Charter, considered the founding document of global preservation movement, says any addition to the landmark must fit but be distinct from the architectural composition of the location, and it must bear a contemporary stamp to prevent confusion. In America, preservation guidance states that additions should be differentiated and compatible. The design should reflect the historic building's proportions, rhythm, and materials, while at the same time protecting the integrity of the adjacent National Register building. An important reference document for doing this is called New Exterior Additions to Historic Buildings. It's sometimes called Preservation Brief. It's part of the National Historic Preservation Act standards. And it was created specifically for this challenge. It provides the how-to design guidance on preparing a compatible design. Architectural review boards in community historic districts require a newer design to borrow architectural cues from the adjacent historic building, with the goal of creating a compatible structure that complements and references the historic, while consciously avoiding literal resemblance. That's a key, consciously avoiding that literal resemblance. The guidance encourages architects to reflect, not copy, the original. In doing so, they provide a design that is both modern and contextual, fitting into the surroundings. Observe in the renderings that you're seeing how the patterns and the features of the mansion and the Heritage Center correspond to each other, including the alignment, both horizontally and vertically, of the mansion's floor elevations, cornice line, window openings, and the materials used and the color palette utilized. Differentiation is created in the Heritage Center with the flat roof and the utilization of clear and fretted glass and the interior floor plans, of course. When asked for comment, the State Historic Preservation Office agreed that MKSD's design for the addition is differentiated and compatible, but it is still subordinate to the Stroud Mansion. The design references the architectural rhythm and details and patterns, while providing contrast and visual cues to the casual observer regarding their relative age. The Stroudsburg Borough Historic Architectural Review Board and the Borough Council reviewed the project and with some minor accommodations provided the project with a certificate of appropriateness, thus greenlighting the project. After seeing the changes in MKSD's design for the exterior facade, a historical architect in Arizona said that it's an award winner for compatibility. He was really impressed with the change that they made to accommodate. The MCHA is very pleased with the team of architects at MKSD, without a doubt. They utilized the standards and the preservation guidance in creating a future landmark in downtown Stroudsburg. However, our emphasis is still the Shroud Mansion. It is the structure on the National Register and listed on the National Register twice as part of the Stroudsburg Historic District and separately as an individual significant building. After the Heritage Center has been added and the MCHA's operations are all moved there, then the 3 floors and basement of the original mansion can be fully utilized as a museum house. MCHA will be able to exhibit and rotate our items of our county's history and prehistory, which is mostly in storage right now. I hope that helped understand. Thank you very much for listening.
Great, thank you. And now we're going to hear from Bill Leonard, who is a board member and chair of the Facilities Committee. Has a few remarks.
Okay. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Ken. Good overview on the exterior of the project. And both Ken and Amy had covered some of the preliminary information. The design kickoff with the architect, MKSD from Allentown, we had in January of last year, 2020, along with some board members. That was just the initial kickoff after the preliminary designs, which we had looked at years ago, to get moving forward to get this thing off the ground. Since then, we've been having teleconference meetings with the architect every 2 weeks, pretty much open design issues, questions back and forth for Amy and her staff as far as what do you need for this or what do you need for that. Just moving forward, sorting out conflicts and that type of thing. Ken had mentioned we did get approval from the Stroudsburg Historic Architectural Review Board, and we also are in process of several permitting parameters with the Monroe County Planning Commission, the Monroe County Conservation District, the Borough of Stroudsburg zoning. Just recently found out that we are considered a major land development, which is going to take some more time and effort for the application for the zoning permit. Also, and I think Ken mentioned the State Historic Preservation Office had looked at this design, and they conducted an informal review in May of 2020. And they approve of the project. No formal approval is required at this point. If we in fact get state or federal funding, we will have to get formal approval from the State Historic Preservation Office, but they've already kind of pretty much nodded their head that say this design meets the standards. The scope of this project, Amy and Ken had covered some of the basic information on the exterior of the building, but it's really about 7,000 square feet of floor area on 3 floors, connected to the existing mansion through the 1893 addition, which, and that addition there that was built in 1893 will be deconstructed and reconstructed. It'd be documented what the construction is, and mention something else about that in a second. And Amy also mentioned about the community room for educational programs. That's going to be able to seat well over 100 people. The existing space we have now in the mansion seats about 35 people. So that's a big plus for this this new addition here. The research library is going to be 900 square feet. If anybody's been in our library in the current mansion, it's pretty much tucked between a couple of other rooms there, and pretty much not bigger than a large closet. Curatorial storage area, controlled temperature and humidity for storing all of our artifacts. Again, in our existing mansion, you go down in the basement and there's newspapers stored there that need to be stored in the right kind of conditions. Collections processing area where Brett and the other county staff can process the artifacts we get them cleaned up, get them stored properly. Office space for the staff. Right now, they're kind of crammed together, and again, stuck between a couple of other rooms. They'll have a good office space, a catering kitchen, a lobby, and a gift shop. An important factor here is the elevator for access of all floors of the existing mansion and the new addition. It brings us into full compliance with the American Disabilities Act. Currently, there's no way to get anyone up into the 2nd and 3rd floors. With this elevator, it's going to access both the new addition and the existing mansion. Amy mentioned a little bit, and on the picture there, you'll see the outdoor courtyard in front of facing the Main Street portion of the addition. And the interior peel, we're going to actually, where the 1893 addition connects to the existing mansion, we're going to open up some of the existing mansion there so that from inside the new facility, you'll be able to see the construction process, the construction of the existing Stroud Mansion. That's interesting. And the architects really went out and did a good job on that. Also, again, I think Amy mentioned, correct the existing deficiencies in the existing mansion. Heating and air conditioning, no fresh air turnover in the existing mansion. We'll have that, we'll take care of that. Handicapped accessibility, I talked about the elevator. Life safety deficiencies, the alarm system in the existing mansion is going to be corrected. Fire detection system. One of the key things I asked the architects to home in on, especially in the meeting area, was the acoustics. We want to make sure that when we have programs in there that there's no reverberation, the sound bouncing off the hard surfaces. I know Amy has been looking into the type of lighting they need for the addition. The architects have been going back and forth with Amy on some things there. I mentioned mechanical system, low maintenance landscaping outside. We don't want to have a lot of burden on maintaining the landscaping. And we also are using pervious hardscape to allow the water, rather than run off the courtyard area there. We have the patio. We're going to be able to, it's going to be able to percolate into the ground. Briefly on the cost estimate, the construction cost estimate at this point in design is approximately $5.3 million. That's based on prevailing wage rates. That includes the new building, the alteration to the existing mansion, the site courtyard, and municipal approvals. Now, beyond that, they also called soft cost, additional cost, the design for the architect, the furnishings and equipment. We'll be able to reuse some of the stuff, but we need to purchase some new. Exhibition displays, not exactly certain how far we're going to go with this, but there's a range of ideas there. And also beyond the construction, we've got an increased operation and maintenance costs to the Monroe County Historical Association to maintain this building. So currently we're approximately about 60% design. The architect did come in to the board by Zoom back in June and also in September and gave an overview of where we are, how we're doing, and we're doing good. We had a day-long site review with the architects back in October. crawled around up in the attic and down through the basement, all through the existing mansion and making the connections. We made initial submission to the regulatory agencies, the Conservation District, the Planning Commission, and the Borough Council and the zoning. And our target start of construction at this point is spring of 2022. That, in a nutshell, is where we are, and we're moving along very well. We just need support from the community, and we'll get this thing, and we'll have this thing constructed in a couple of years. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bill and Ken.